Here we are back at it again. Another night, another video. And it's just another one I'm adding to the book series, right? So tonight we talking about a big classic in my life, and the book is called Evolve Your Brain, okay, by Joe Dispenza. And this book is extremely influential in my life because I had read it at a point in time where I was going through a very rough time. I was going through a hardship in life, and I stumbled upon this book, and it piqued my interest. So I wanted to see, I wanted to go deeper into it and further into the research. So basically, what this book is talking about, so it's talking about obviously like the brain, but it's breaking it down scientific, and it's also interesting to me because it's not by like a neurosurgeon, it's not by a neurologist, it's not by anybody that necessarily deals with the brain. The book is about, like, he's a chiropractor, right? It's a chiropractor, and I believe in here he had a motorcycle accident at one point in his life, and he healed himself through different methods and through different things and experiments that he had tried on other patients, and he just added all this up together and put it in one and done it for himself, right? Healed himself totally, right? And in record time without the doctors. So I thought that was amazing. And the main premise, like when the book starts off, is saying like how most people think like our brain is hardwired, or early on in science when people were studying neurology, they thought the brain was hardwired, meaning once once the brain is set on something, it doesn't change until he found a way and really looked at this further and did further research and figured out that the brain can be rewired, right? You're always firing and making new connections through these different pathways in the brain that allows you to keep rewiring and rewiring and rewiring. So I thought that was an extremely interesting thing, man. And I thought it was amazing that he was able to accomplish this. And he also breaks down some experiments he did, and gives some practical advice throughout the book. So to me, it's just phenomenal, man, and it's extremely influential in my life. So without further ado, I'm gonna get down and I'm gonna get to a chapter breakdown in the book. It's 12 chapters, but I'm gonna try to do this kind of fast because I know y'all probably don't want to hear all this, but nevertheless, I'm gonna give you a breakdown of these 12 chapters. Here we go. Evolve Your Brain, Joe Dispenza. I'm breaking it down. Let's get it. So chapter one is called beginnings, right? And chapter one is some big ideas in it that I kind of want to branch off on and break down. And it's some like a common theme in all of these chapters, right? Chapter one, beginnings. It introduces the power of thought, how awareness of one's thoughts can lead to changes in the brain and body. It sets up the premise that thoughts alone, even without action, can trigger physiological changes. Also, it discusses the challenge of habitual thinking and emotional patterns and how these limits change, right? So that's chapter one, beginnings. Chapter two is called On the Backs of Giants, right? And you may be thinking like that's kind of a crazy chapter, a crazy name for a chapter, but it's not because it explains more, right? So chapter two explores cases of spontaneous healing and what they suggest about the mind and body connection, right? Chapter two, it questions conventional medical thinking, compares healing experiences of different individuals to point out common themes like emotional release, mindset shift, belief, etc., etc. It builds the case that we stand on prior discoveries, which this would be considered the giants, right? In neuroscience or biology. That's what I was kind of telling y'all earlier about how he did different experiments and he kind of said like the forethought was that the brain's hardwired. But through his discoveries, he realized that you can rewire the brain even in old age, right? So that's how that was really talking about. Chapter three. This was a good one because this is where we start getting into like a huge breakdown of the science, right? It started breaking it down real nice. So, chapter three, neurons in the nervous system, traveling the original information superhighway. Okay, so chapter three covers like the basics, which is like the neurons, synapses, electrochemical signal, and how information flows through the nervous system, how the nervous system encodes experiences, how inputs from the environment became neural signals, sets foundation for later discussion of how thoughts slash experiences will mold these circuits. And it's a beautiful thing in this because what it does is it starts to channel that energy away from just like random experiencing things that he had done, the chiropractor or the doctor in a sense, and it starts to tell you like how the brain over time evolves to what we have today, right? From the very simple mind to the very complex composition of it that we have today. So I thought that was phenomenal the way he broke that down as well, right? Chapter 4, it says our brains, three brains and more. Now he goes even more deeper. So each chapter he goes a little deeper and a little deeper, which I like, right? So chapter 4 introduces a model of three brains or sub brains. It has the thinking brain, which is your neocortex, the emotional brain, which is the limbic systems, and then it goes to the unconscious slash habitual brain, which is often linked to like the brain stem and the cerebellum. So how these all three of these brains, it talks about how they interact, how emotional and the unconscious slash habitual circuits tend to dominate unless we consciously bring in the thinking brain. Also about brain evolution, how the brain expanded, folded, things like that. You got different fold, you got gray matter, white matter, all these other different things, and how, like I say, how it ultimately what y'all call your third eye, your pineal gland or pineal gland, however you say it, it introduces that thought as well. And it's very beautiful. I like it. I'm not gonna lie. Now, chapter 5, we got wired by nature, changeable by nurture. Phenomenal, because I took a lot of psychology and it's broke it down for me a lot more in the scientific way, right? So, chapter 5 examines genetic versus environmental influences. This is big. While many predispositions come from genes or early conditioning, nurture and experience can override many of them. The idea that what we are wired to do doesn't have to permanently limit us. Emphasis on plasticity, influenced by habit, thought, and emotion. So, that neuroplasticity he's talking about is that rewiring. A lot of times you hear people say, like, what is it, a product of my environment. That's basically what this chapter is talking about, and how you can be born of a certain cloth, but whatever your environment that you are grow up in or that you are cultivated in will ultimately decide how you end up. Just how it is, man. Like, this is science, it's not just anecdotal evidence. So, chapter 6 furthermore goes into the neuroplasticity, how knowledge and experience change and evolve the brain. So, deep dives in chapter 6, it deep dives into how the brain changes, how neurons form new connections, how repeated practice strength circuits, my bad, how repeated practice strengthens circuits, which are like the neurons that fire together, wire together. That's the big saying he uses in the book. So, the role of the glial cells, the astrocytes, etc., things like that. All these different scientific terms in neurology, right? So the role of the glial cells, astrocytes, how these new experiences and knowledge lead to actual physical brain changes. It also covers how patterns become stabilized if repeated. And again, like I said, that was the like what is it? Neurons that fire together, wire together. So that's all. That's basically saying right there that you know, whatever pattern or habits you establish in your life are gonna be they're gonna be hard fixed in your brain, and it's gonna be hard to break them. Right, hard to break bad habits. Chapter 7, putting knowledge and experience into practice. And I think this is where he starts to begin his experimentation. Just saying, I think one was like how he was like doing piano classes, right? And he had like one group actually play the piano, and he had another group just visualize themselves playing the piano but not touching the keys. And then he had both groups do this for a period of time and then play a song and see who was better at like memorization, who was better at execution and things like this. And I'm not gonna lie, the results was actually mind-boggling. But chapter 7 moves from theory to application, how we use repetition, association, senses, emotions to encode new neural circuits, how mental rehearsal, focus, intention all play a part, how to interrupt old circuits, the importance of conscious practice to bring about change. All right. That's what we got for chapter 7. Chapter 8, which is the chemistry of survival, right? Not so much really in the primitive sense, but just a little deep dive more into, the survival of human beings, right? And neurology as a whole, as he speaks of it. It looks at how the body's chemical systems respond to stress, fear, survival mode, how certain thought slash emotion patterns produce survival chemistry, which is like our fight or flight, how that developed over time and evolved, which get reinforced. It explores how habitual stress responses sabotage health and well-being, and how moving out of survival chemistry is key to evolving the brain. And this is where he starts to break it down. Like, well, not break it down more, but this is where he starts to come to a conclusion of everything that happened over his life and how he actually manifested this in his own accident. Chapter 9, the chemistry of emotional addiction. So it introduces the idea that we can become addicted neurologically and chemically to emotional states. Facts, even negative ones, because they become familiar and expected. The same way I tell y'all people on the internet, your algorithm the way it is, because ultimately you like drama, you like negativity, you feed into it. It's a trigger for you, but it's an emotion and you're addicted to it now. Your subconscious has taken that, and it has ultimately it keep feeding it to you because it knows you you get a chemical response in your body from it. So that's y'all. uh, the brain slash body come to anticipate these emotional states. Also, how memory, emotion, neural circuits reinforce each other, creating loops. If you know what a loop is, it's just back and forth over and over and over, the circle of life. To change, one must identify and break these loops. But this is what I'm gonna say. This is what I'm gonna add to that. It's hard to do this when y'all are putting yourselves and y'all keep um resorting to the same environment. It's extremely hard. You're never going to break this loop, even if you got to thinking it's up here. If you stand in an environment that's mediocre or below average, you're never going to break out this cycle. It's never going to happen. You can dang near bet your life on it, especially nowadays, bro. It's impossible. Dang near impossible. So, chapter 10, taking control, the frontal lobe in thought and in action. So chapter 10 talks about the role of the frontal lobe in intention, decision making, and self-regulation. How conscious thought can override habitual slash emotional responses when the frontal lobe is engaged. How to strengthen one's capacity to observe one's thoughts and feelings to make choices rather than react automatically. This is beautiful because, like I said, it gives that distinction between responding and reacting, and how to differentiate the two, and ultimately do these things so that you yourself can come out on top, right? And not be self-sabotaging. Because that's a big thing nowadays. Okay. So here we are. We almost done. Yeah, I told you I was gonna kind of go through this kind of fast, right? Even though it's one of my favorite books. Chapter 11, the art and science of mental rehearsal. Now, that experiment I told y'all earlier about, like with the piano and everything, this is where like he discusses this more, right? So how visualization slash mental practice works using focused thought plus imagination to rehearse new behaviors, new neural states. The brain often doesn't know the difference between mental rehearsal and actual experience in many respects. So this is a very powerful tool using attention, clear imagery, elevated emotions. And this is what I tell people all the time. Like, you ever sat and just thought about something, created a scenario in your head until like you ran across a person or ran across a circumstance or a situation, and it almost played out that way because in your head it felt so real. That's exactly what this is talking about. Like, you've thought about it so much you've made yourself crazy. Because your brain can't tell the difference when you're using that clear imagery, when you're using the powerful tool of imagination and your elevated emotions. Your brain doesn't know the difference sometimes. So when you sit here going over certain things in your head and it's not even really happening, subconsciously your brain is like, oh, this is it. So now when you put yourself in front of this person in physical form, or you put yourself in that situation, then it happens. Like, that's why it's like you hear people say, like, oh, they drove themselves crazy. Yes, that is true. It is scientifically been proven. You can drive yourself crazy by thinking crazy thoughts, and it's not even really happening because your brain can't decipher between the two. That's how strong and powerful your mind is. So don't waste it, man. It's a powerful tool, bro. Dr. King told y'all that. All right, here we are. The end. Chapter 12 is evolving your being, right? So here is where we focus on the integration, moving beyond doing and thinking to being. making your new identity, reinvent ourselves, right? Making your new identity, new neural networks, emotional states, habitual, so they define how you exist. Okay. When new states of being are stable, the brain and body operate from that new baseline. Also speaks about how we shift personal reality from simply reacting to external conditions to co-creating or shaping them. I love that. And this is why I put out a previous video saying, like, now is the time to reinvent yourself and never let them box you in. Because a lot of people get caught up in there, right? A lot of people get caught up in that what we talked about earlier, the neurons that fire together, wire together. And then they get stuck there. They get stuck. We're not trying to get stuck. We're trying to fire with new neurons so we can wire new ones, right? Or rewire old ones. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That is a lie, right? Now, for most people, now the tiger don't change his stripes. But we have learned through this brief breakdown, and if you read the book, you will really learn more that you can change, man. It's extremely hard. It's extremely difficult, which is why me personally, I love changing my environment. I like moving around. I like being in new places. I like meeting new people. I like making new friends sometimes, even though I consider myself an introvert. I like doing that because it will help this. It will help. It helps your brain, to not become so used to a certain pattern, right? It helps your brain to keep getting new experiences. That way, it forces your brain to learn new things. I like that. But all in all, it's a marvelous book, man. It's freaking phenomenal and amazing. It's changed my life tremendously, right? And in the epilogue, it just talks about a quantum change, right? A quantum change. It wraps up with reflections on how quantum physics suggests that our consciousness, thoughts, and awareness is more deeply involved with reality than common paradigms allow. The possibility of radical change or the quantum change when one fully embodies new thinking, feeling, and being. The idea that the future need not be bound by past conditioning. And that's what I'm gonna leave y'all with today. Don't let your future be determined by past conditioning. Your environment is everything. And if you're in a messed up environment, man, like fix it, bro. Like I know it's gonna be hard. I know it's like I said in the beginning, it's dang near impossible. I know it's gonna be extremely difficult for a lot of people. But the thing is to like you have to believe in something more. You have to believe, like your belief has to be stronger than everybody else's doubt. And that's what I want for everybody. Like, if you are in that stage of reinventing your life, if you are in that stage of trying to get better, or you're wanting better, or you're manifesting certain things in your life, this is what we have to do. We have to evolve our brain. We have to see more to become more, right? And you have to see more, then do more and become more. But that's just what it is. Now, if you straight with where you at, then hey, it is what it is. And if you can give me some pointers and you can give me some tips and advice on how to, elevate in life, I'm all for it. But until then, like this, what I'm gonna leave y'all with because it's a book that's helped me tremendously, y'all. So that's all I got for y'all tonight. I hope y'all enjoyed it. We're gonna do a few more of these, and then I got another series coming after the book series, right? So tell me how y'all like it. Drop it down below in the comments. Leave a like, leave a comment. I got nothing more for y'all. I'm out.